All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We always try to bring you the topics that you, our listeners, really want to hear about. And lately, well, one thing has been coming up a lot: platform engineering.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic.
So we figured, why not dive right in? We've got this book, Platform Engineering by Camille Fournier and Ian Plosker.
Great book.
And we're going to really unpack the core concepts, those practical strategies, everything you need to build a rock-solid internal platform. Think of this episode as like a cheat sheet to navigating today's complex tech world. I'm host speaker, your guide to making all this tech stuff make sense.
And I'm expert speaker, here to offer a bit more context and connect the dots to the bigger picture.
Our mission for you, the learner, is simple. Cut through the noise. We want you to walk away from this deep dive with the key insights from this book, no matter where you are in your journey. Maybe you're prepping for a strategy session at work, or maybe you're trying to figure out how these platform teams actually work in practice. Or heck, maybe you're just curious about what goes on behind the scenes to make all this software we use every day actually run smoothly. Well, we're going to break it down for you. No jargon overload, promise. Just those aha moments. All right, let's jump right in. The book starts with this idea of an overgeneral swamp. What is that? And why should anyone who deals with modern infrastructure care?
Well, it's really interesting. The book points out how all these amazing cloud services and open source tools, they offer this incredible power and flexibility.
Yeah.
But they can also lead us right into this metaphorical swamp.
Yeah.
It's almost like, imagine you have all these building blocks.
Right.
They're super versatile. You can do almost anything with them, but they don't come with instructions. You have to figure out how to put them together yourself.
It's like having a toolbox with a million different parts, but no assembly guide.
Exactly. And that's where the glue code comes in. It's all the custom scripts, configurations, those bespoke integrations that each team develops just to make all these different tools play nicely together.
Yeah.
And while that gets things moving fast, ships features quickly,
Sure.
the book argues it actually creates this kind of stickiness in the long run.
Yeah.
Everything becomes so interconnected and interdependent, often in undocumented ways,
Oh, yeah.
that making changes later on becomes incredibly risky and time-consuming.
Right.
So it's not just that complexity exists, it's that it often hides behind this facade of flexibility
Right.
and ends up making the system more fragile and harder to innovate on in the long run.
I see what you mean. It's almost like, each team is so focused on building their specific thing, they grab whatever cloud service or open source library works for them at the time, and they write their own little translator to get it to talk to the rest of the system.
Right.
But then fast forward a year or two, and you've got this massive sprawling system, all these different technologies stitched together with duct tape and string.
Spaghetti code.
Yeah, exactly. Spaghetti code. Figure 1.1 in the book, it really captures this architectural mess. Have you ever seen this in the real world, expert speaker, where that initial rush to ship ends up causing major headaches down the line?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it. You see different teams in a company spinning up their own cloud accounts or choosing different database technologies, each with their own quirks and set of procedures. Everyone's trying to do the right thing, picking what seems best at that moment.
Right.
But then imagine you need to roll out a consistent security policy across the entire organization or comply with some new regulation. Suddenly, you're stuck with this wildly inconsistent landscape. Updating anything, even for a simple change, becomes this Herculean task because of all that custom glue holding it together. It's like trying to upgrade the operating system on, 1,000 different laptops, each configured in a totally unique way. No two are the same.
Like untangling Christmas lights that have been in storage for a decade.
Yeah.
So the book also takes us through a little history lesson, how we got to this point where the swamp seems almost inevitable.
Yeah.
Can you give us the quick version of that timeline?
Sure. In the beginning, you had your software developers. They were the ones writing the code, building the applications. Then you had your system administrators, the sysadmins. They kept the servers humming, the network running smoothly.
With the lights on.
Exactly, keep the lights on. But as the internet exploded and software became mission critical for businesses, 204/7 uptime became essential. So you started seeing the rise of operations engineering teams. These are often sysadmins who were drawn to the challenges of keeping these increasingly complex systems online, no matter what.
And then Google throws a wrench into the mix, right?
They did. Around 2004, Google pioneered this thing called Site Reliability Engineering, SRE.
SRE.
Yeah. The idea was managing these huge, complex systems needed the rigor and discipline of software engineering. It wasn't just about reacting to problems, it was about building reliability into the system from the ground up and automating everything you could.
I see.
And then, in 2015, their SRE book came out,
Oh, yeah.
and it really made waves.
Mm.
Especially with all the buzz around DevOps at the time, many companies were trying to embrace that DevOps philosophy, breaking down the silos between development and operations, but they were struggling with how to actually make it work.
Yeah, make it a reality.
Exactly. And SRE, with its focus on measurable reliability targets and automation, it offered a really concrete path forward.
So how does platform engineering fit into all of this?
That's a great question. And the book argues that platform engineering is the next logical step in this evolution. It's about creating internal platforms that abstract away all the complexity of the underlying technologies.
Okay.
And most importantly, empower those application developers. It recognizes that simply telling developers, you build it, you run it, which is that core DevOps principle,
Right.
often isn't enough. You need to give them the right tools, the right abstractions to actually do that effectively.
So it's not just about throwing developers the keys to the server room and saying, good luck.
No, not at all.
It's about giving them a well-paved road to build and operate their applications on.
Precisely.
So the book lays out these 4 core pillars of platform engineering. Can you break down those foundations for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Chapter 2 outlines these 4 pillars:
Yeah.
product, software, breadth, and operations. Think of it this way. A successful platform is engineered like a product, with real users, and those users are the application developers. It needs to be built with a software engineering mindset.
Right.
To ensure it's robust and reusable, it has to serve a wide range of teams, not just a select few. And of course, it absolutely needs operational excellence to guarantee reliability and stability.
Got it. Product, software, breadth, and operations. So why is platform engineering so important? What are the big problems that it solves for an organization?
Well, at its core, platform engineering is about delivering on the promise of mature DevOps. Enabling developers to truly own what they build and operate it effectively.
Mm-hmm.
By abstracting away all that infrastructure complexity, a well-designed platform frees up developers to focus on what they're best at, building those features, delivering value to users without getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty of servers and networks.
Right.
The book does point out that, getting developers to accept the limitations that come with using a platform, especially those who are used to having more direct control, can be a challenge.
Yeah, engineers, we like to tinker, we like to be in control.
Absolutely. But the payoff, in terms of efficiency and consistency, can be huge. The book also draws a clear distinction between platform engineering and other approaches that might seem similar at first glance.
Okay.
Like, if you look at Table 1.1, it outlines those, and the key takeaway is that while teams focusing solely on infrastructure or pure SRE bring valuable skills to the table,
Of course.
they often lack that combination of focus and software development expertise that's essential for building internal platforms.
Right.
Platforms that truly empower developers with those self-service capabilities.
One of the things that really resonated with me in the book was this idea of treating developers as your internal customers. Why is that shift in perspective so crucial?
This user-centric approach, it's really fascinating. The book argues that platform teams, they shouldn't just build in a vacuum. They need to think of application developers as their primary users.
Customers?
Their customers, exactly. They need to deeply understand their needs, their pain points, their workflows. It's just like any other product team. And they emphasize that developers can face some real usability hurdles when they have to interact with these central platforms. If they're used to having direct access and suddenly they're forced to navigate an abstract platform with poor documentation or clunky interfaces,
Right.
that can feel like a huge step backwards.
So instead of just guessing what developers need, platform teams should be actively seeking feedback, understanding those pain points.
Absolutely. They need to invest in creating a fantastic developer experience. This means intuitive interfaces, crystal clear documentation, seamless workflows. It's the same as with any external product. You wouldn't expect customers to use something that's frustrating or difficult.
Right.
And you can't expect developers to embrace a platform that creates more friction than it solves.
So what are some of those must-have features, the things that make a platform truly developer-friendly?
Well, self-service interfaces are absolutely critical. You need to give developers easy ways to access resources, provision things, configure things, without needing constant hand-holding from the platform team. This could mean user-friendly graphical interfaces, powerful command line tools, seamless integration with their CI/CD pipelines. The best platforms, they offer those sensible defaults for beginners while still giving experienced users the flexibility to do more advanced things.
Got it.
And, the book also touches on the potential of AI and large language models to enhance platform operations and tooling down the line.
Oh, interesting.
But they wisely point out that this hinges on having solid data and instrumentation in place.
Yeah, AI needs good data to work its magic. So
Exactly.
self-service, making life easier for developers, that's key.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when platform engineering goes wrong? What are the potential downsides, the consequences of not doing it well?
Well, things can go south pretty quickly. You can end up with poor operational stability.
Yeah. Oh.
If the underlying platforms are unreliable, prone to outages, developers are going to lose trust. They're going to be hesitant to build critical things on top of something that's shaky.
Makes sense.
The book also talks about the pain of mandated migrations, especially when they're poorly planned and disruptive. If the platform team isn't thinking about the impact on application teams, it can create a ton of wasted effort, frustration, and resentment.
Yeah.
And then, there's the political aspect. If you can't clearly communicate the value of the platform to leadership, to stakeholders across the organization,
Right.
you're going to face resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're doing amazing work behind the scenes, if you can't articulate the benefits, you risk losing support.
It's all about communication. So let's say you're in a smaller company, or maybe you're leading a team within a larger organization, just starting to think about platform engineering. What are the first steps? What advice does the book offer?
Well, for startups, the message is pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
Don't rush into formal platform engineering too early.
Okay.
Focus on those foundational engineering practices. Foster a collaborative culture where everyone pitches in on the infrastructure challenges. In those early days, trying to create dedicated platform teams can be a distraction. It can actually slow down the rapid iteration that startups need to survive.
So it's more about shared responsibility, a sense of everyone working together to solve problems.
Exactly. The need for dedicated platform teams. It typically emerges as the organization grows.
I see.
The book even mentions Dunbar's number. That idea that once you hit around 150 people, maintaining informal communication becomes really difficult.
Right.
You need more structure. And that's often when you start seeing the need for those dedicated teams focusing on infrastructure, developer tools, and even customer-facing platform services. And for those external-facing platforms, they stress partnering early with product management to make sure everything aligns with the overall business strategy.
So you're scaling up, platform teams are starting to form. How do you make sure that those internal platforms don't just become shelfware,
Oh, that's a good point.
the tools that nobody actually uses?
Yeah, discoverability and adoption. Those are absolutely crucial. You can have the most amazing platform in the world, but if developers don't know about it or don't see the value,
It's useless.
it's useless. You need clear naming. Your secrets management platform, for example, shouldn't be called something obscure like, Project Chimera.
Right.
Documentation has to be comprehensive, searchable.
Right.
You need to be proactive in communicating the value, through emails, dedicated learning sessions, company-wide announcements, and maybe most importantly, the platform has to actively reduce friction for its users. This includes making migrations as painless as possible. They even suggest limiting the number of project managers solely focused on orchestrating migrations,
Interesting.
because that incentivizes platform engineers to bake automation into the migration process itself.
Clever. That forces them to think about how to make it easier for everyone. It seems like platform engineering, it's not just a technical shift, it's also a cultural shift.
Oh, absolutely. The book really emphasizes that. It's about moving away from those siloed approaches where infrastructure teams are off doing their own thing.
Right.
It's about fostering a mindset where everyone is thinking about the developer experience, recognizing the different skill sets that are essential in a platform team.
And the book talks about some common pitfalls, things to watch out for when building those platform teams. What are some of the red flags?
One common trap is what they call an overly systems-focused team.
Okay.
They might be amazing operationally, but if they lack those software development chops, they're going to struggle to create those user-friendly abstractions.
Right. You need both sides of the coin.
Exactly. And while the SRE role is critical for reliability, they make it clear that it doesn't encompass all the non-feature work that goes into building a comprehensive platform. Similarly, a DevOps engineer, there's some overlap with platform engineering, but the cultural emphasis is often different. Another pitfall is over-specialization. Deep expertise in things like networking or security, that's valuable. But if everyone is hyper-focused on their niche, you might end up with a platform that's impressive in parts, but doesn't actually solve the broader needs of its users.
Right. It needs to work as a whole. The book also brings up this interesting point about empathy, or sometimes the lack of empathy, within platform teams.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. They talk about how easily friction can arise between platform teams and application developers. It's tempting to dismiss user feedback or to see struggles as just, developers not understanding the platform well enough.
Right.
And while the easy answer is don't hire jerks, the reality is more nuanced than that.
It always is.
It always is.
Yeah.
You're going to encounter defensive behavior, people sensitive to criticism, and even some users who are just genuinely difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Platform engineers need to develop those soft skills, that empathy to navigate these situations. Providing support, it's often part of the job. And the ability to really listen, understand, and help solve user problems.
Yeah.
That's essential for building trust.
So it's not just about writing good code, it's about having good people skills. What about the people leading those teams? What are some of the key qualities of a good platform engineering manager?
Well, they have to understand that the pace of platform work is often different from application development.
Okay.
You're dealing with higher stakes, more complexity.
Right.
So things move a bit slower. A good manager can explain that, can justify that slower pace, while still pushing for regular releases and managing those stakeholder expectations.
And what about product managers? What's their role within platform teams?
The book really stresses that good platform teams, they're product-driven, user-focused. And at a certain scale, you need dedicated product managers to gather that user feedback, to understand the evolving needs, and to develop a cohesive product strategy for the platform.
So they're not just there to manage Jira tickets.
No, not at all. It's much more strategic. They need to understand the why behind the platform, the roadmap, not just the what and how.
Okay, so let's talk about the day-to-day operations. What are some of the essential practices that platform teams need to get right?
Running platforms, effectively, it takes a lot of discipline. Well-defined on-call rotations,
Right.
robust support processes, consistent operational practices. But, they're not advocating for rigid bureaucracy. These practices should be there to ensure a reliable and trusted platform.
Okay.
And they talk about the importance of sustainable on-call workloads, addressing the root causes of alerts so engineers aren't constantly bombarded with noise.
Right.
Support practices also need to evolve as the platform grows.
Here.
Initially, the on-call engineers might handle all support requests, but eventually you might need a dedicated support team, even an external support organization, with a tight feedback loop to the platform engineers.
I see.
They talk about SLOs and SLAs being important, but they suggest that error budgets might not be strictly necessary for every team. Rigorous change management for production deployments is crucial, as is proactive monitoring to catch problems before they impact users. And then regular operational reviews to identify those recurring issues and continuously improve.
A lot to keep track of. So shifting gears a bit, how should platform teams approach planning new projects and initiatives?
Well, they recommend using narratives for planning those big initiatives, similar to Amazon's 6-page documents.
Okay.
These narratives, they need to lay out the problem, the proposed solution, the rationale, and a clear plan of action.
Got it.
Estimating resources, including headcount, is key, as is having a strategy for driving adoption of new components. They introduce this concept of system improvements, encompassing reliability, efficiency, security, and they suggest using techniques like stack ranking to prioritize those.
Right.
For larger organizations, they talk about the role of FinOps specialists in managing cloud costs. And they also caution against those overly bureaucratic top-down planning processes that can become more about politics than about delivering value.
Oh, yeah.
They touch on the challenges of inner-sourcing, the importance of communicating regularly with stakeholders, strong documentation, all of that good stuff.
Sounds like good advice. The book also delves into this idea of different mindsets in engineering, using the Wordley Maps concept.
Oh, that's a fascinating part. It talks about how you often have 3 dominant mindsets. Pioneers, the ones who love exploring new technologies. Settlers, who take those innovations and build reliable, scalable systems. And then town planners, who are focused on optimizing and industrializing those mature systems.
Makes sense.
And the key point is that teams with different mindsets, they can clash.
Right.
A team of pioneers might get frustrated with the more cautious approach of town planners, and vice versa.
So how do you address that?
Well, the book suggests that as a platform matures, you might need to consciously shift the team's mindset, maybe even through re-architecting the platform itself.
So building a robust, secure platform, it's not just about writing good code. What else goes into it?
It's about building resilience, minimizing the impact of failures, reducing the need for human intervention.
Right.
They give examples of security solutions that also enhance the architecture.
Oh, okay.
Things like API protection, robust authentication, caching. They stress the importance of testing, especially for those foundational platforms. Not just unit tests, but integration testing. Even incorporating user-submitted tests.
Wow.
Using modern testing techniques like property-based testing and fuzzing. And then, of course, modern release management. Things like canary releases, gradual rollouts.
Okay.
And they actually suggest that sometimes it's better to stay slightly behind the bleeding edge of open source releases.
Really?
Yeah, to prioritize stability and benefit from the bug fixes that the broader community has already found.
So don't always jump on the newest, shiniest thing.
Exactly.
What about when you need to do a major overhaul of a platform? How do you approach something as daunting as re-architecting?
Well, the book outlines a four-step approach. First, you need that clear, ambitious, long-term vision.
Right.
But you also have to factor in the cost and complexity of migration.
Of course.
Then you need to identify those key achievable wins, things you can deliver in, say, 12 months to prove the value. And finally, and this is crucial, you need buy-in from leadership.
Yeah, you're not going to do a major re-architecture without that.
And be prepared to iterate, to be patient. They caution against becoming what they call an architecture astronaut, someone who's so focused on the ideal future state that they lose touch with the practical realities.
Oh, I've definitely met a few of those. They use the example of migrating to Kubernetes alongside a move to the public cloud as a common driver for these big re-architectures.
Right.
And they warn about the trap of ending up with multiple overlapping platforms if you don't plan your migrations well.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
So migrations and sunsetting, they're often the unsung heroes of platform engineering.
Yeah.
What are the key things to remember there?
They see migrations as a chance for platform teams to really shine,
Okay.
to prove their value by making it easy for their users. And they list some common challenges. Unclear ownership, vague requirements, not enough testing, unrealistic timelines.
Yeah, all the classic project management traps.
Exactly. They stress the importance of early planning, supporting multiple versions concurrently, and building automation to reduce that manual effort.
Make it as smooth as possible.
Exactly. And then, when it comes to sunsetting, they emphasize the need for a clear process, communication with affected users, willingness to negotiate timelines.
It's about managing expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also about recognizing when to let go, not trying to support every platform forever.
Focus on what matters. Platform teams, they don't operate in isolation. How should they manage those relationships with stakeholders across the organization?
They introduce this stakeholder management framework that looks at both power and interest. Some stakeholders have high power, some have low power, some are highly interested, some are less so. And they provide specific strategies for engaging with each group.
So a tailored approach.
Exactly. And they emphasize transparency, clear communication, especially when things get tough. Being able to find those compromises, being able to say no gracefully when necessary.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It really is. They talk about the reasons why application teams might go off and build their own shadow platforms, and they offer ways to address that.
Okay.
And they also touch on the challenges of budget management, particularly during tough economic times.
So how do you actually measure the success of platform engineering?
They caution against individual performance metrics and focus on team-level outcomes.
Okay.
They offer 4 key areas to look at: aligned platforms, trusted platforms, platforms that manage complexity, and loved platforms.
Right. Break those down for us.
Aligned platforms means everyone's on the same page, shared purpose, cohesive strategy, coordinated planning.
Working together.
Exactly. They caution against relying too heavily on adoption metrics because those can be gamed. Trusted platforms, they go beyond just being stable.
Okay.
It's about demonstrating that reliability, proactive communication, and building credibility with leadership.
Showing the value.
Exactly.
So what about managing complexity?
Platforms that manage complexity, those are the ones that effectively abstract away all that underlying mess, giving leverage to the application teams.
Right, not just moving the complexity around.
Exactly. It's about reducing glue code, addressing shadow platforms, managing growth in a controlled way, embracing product discovery to ensure the platform evolve.
And loved platforms. What makes a platform loved?
In the context of internal platforms, love is really about developer productivity, positive developer experience.
Okay.
They caution against those simplistic satisfaction scores.
Yeah, this can be misleading.
They share examples of platforms that get it right. Those that are opinionated, those that offer paced paths for common tasks, those that actively address user pain points, and those that leverage existing components effectively.
So it's a combination of factors.
It really is. It's about understanding user workflows, having that product mindset, and focusing on creating truly delightful experiences for those developers.
All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway? What's the future of platform engineering?
They emphasize that we need to move beyond the hype,
Right.
beyond seeing platforms as just a collection of tools.
Mm-hmm.
Successful platform engineering, it's about finding that balance. Teams with a mix of skills, decisions made from multiple perspectives, agile development with rigorous planning, and a willingness to invest in re-architecting and migrating platforms over time.
So to recap our exploration of platform engineering, we've covered the challenges of that overgeneral swamp, the evolution of the field, those 4 core pillars, treating developers like customers, managing complexity, building trust. A lot to think about.
Absolutely.
So, the learner, as you go forth, consider how these principles might apply in your world. What's one area where a more product-focused platform approach could make a real difference?
That's the question to ask yourself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.